All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Someone could give me a shout out in the comments and let me know that you can hear me. That would be great. Oh, wait a second. What's John doing here? John says, I thought John was working. John, I will send you the link just in case you wanted to. I thought that perhaps you couldn't do comic book team up tonight, but I will send you the link just really quickly. Please bear with me, everyone. I have to navigate StreamYard at the same time as start the stream and try to keep talking. So let's see. Invite guest. Give me 2 seconds here. I did not know that John would be in the comments. We were just going to do a very simple make comics fun again night tonight and answer your questions. I was going to talk a little Jack Kirby, quite honestly. And that's why I put Jack Kirby up in the background. Let's see if we can show a little more of that beautiful OMAC cover right there. So let's see who's here to begin with. We have Pedro. Pedro is here. Vaz is here. Let's see what else we got. George is here. John is here. And we have a few more people. Ryan Banks is here. Michael is here. Evening to everybody. So, like I said, I wanted to talk Jack Kirby just for a little bit because I did that video last week. And I was talking about basically the problem with your quote unquote progressive people and why they have, well, mental blocks with a whole bunch of stuff. And I wanted to, well, since the title of the video was psychos or psychopaths, or no, is it psycho or psychology? I think it was. Anyways, I was thinking you put Psycho Man in the background of all of the entire video with his fear, hate. What's the other? He has a little board which he presses to make people around him go into, well, negative emotions and stuff like that. Anyways, I was going to do Psycho Man, but really there wasn't enough Psycho Man to do an entire video. So I figured I'd put OMAC in there because OMAC is a psychotic future, to say the least. Anyways, and the reason I was thinking about OMAC was because I was looking at the Jack Kirby art, looking just for some really good Jack Kirby art to imitate and to, I don't know, to think about and see the very raw nature of it. And I just ran across it because I was going through covers. Let me see. Just hey, someone shout out, please, in the comments. Let me know that you can hear me, because quite honestly, I am still very, very cautious of the fact that after I talked for an hour, when I didn't add myself to the stream, if someone could do that, that would be great. So let's see. Leonidas is here. Pedro is here. Let's see. George, thank you very much, George. You can hear me. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm just a little paranoid. Okay. So I was thinking about the amount of people that actually started off as Jack Kirby wannabes and then actually became extremely, well, talented artists in their own right. Let's just put it that way. And see, here's the thing. I was thinking about how do you become a good artist? And I was trying to start from the position of you have to have proportions down and all that kind of stuff. And then you work into, perfecting, beautiful stuff and beauty in your art and things like that. And then I said to myself, you know what? If you step away from that from 2 seconds, what you really need to start with is Jack Kirby. Because everybody, for the beautiful 80s and 90s that we have, almost everybody either revered Jack Kirby or were an imitator of Jack Kirby or were someone who had worked with Jack Kirby and appreciated his art style. And Jack Kirby himself, as I used to put Jack Kirby quotes up on my channel all the time, and I might do again just because I'm getting back into his art for this reason. Jack Kirby himself said, his proportions were not good. He knew he couldn't do anatomy. He just did the best that he could. He just tried to imitate and to put it into, let's say, the comic book style, because he created the comic book style, which is the everyman style, because the whole point is everybody could make an American comic. Why? Because you don't even have to be an artist, because he wasn't an artist. He never went through, formal training as an artist. And he, again, is one of the founding members of American comic book history and the entire industry. And I was thinking about the artists who were Jack Kirby clones or wannabes. You could include both Sal Buscema and his brother, I assume I haven't come across too much about what their initial reaction was to they want to be comic book artists and who they would imitate. But I know that people like Barry Windsor Smith, who eventually ended up having a much more fluid and, well, his style was made up of almost entirely curves at the end of it. Well, he's not done yet, is he? Yeah, I don't know if Barry Windsor Smith is still alive. He might have died. I think I can remember something about in the back of my mind, maybe, but I'm not sure. Put that in the comments if you know. But his style is almost entirely made up of soft curves. But he started out being an imitator of Jack Kirby, which is very, very angular and something that you actually, if you want to try to imitate Jack Kirby's style, if you're drawing, and you're going to be making sure that you actually don't put many curves in at all. Really, it's one of the things that you try not to do. Everything is angular. He's very much like Walter Simonson. You know, everything is angular there as well. And again, think about Frank Miller. His art is very much, if not directly, indirectly, an imitation of Jack Kirby art. Although he's, you know, he learned, supposedly, according to his own stories, at the hands of Neil Adams, who he just kept on knocking at his door at his house saying, "Can I come in and show you stuff?" But at the same time, you look at this Jack Kirby art. I want to put something up in the background here. Let me put up, let's see what I can pull up here. There's some covers I want to show besides this OMAC cover. Let's see, share screen. Give me 2 seconds. See if I can, here we go. OMAC art. There we go. Let's look at this. I'll see if I can make it bigger. Oh, it's not too bad there. Okay. So this is the OMAC cover that we're looking at right now with a little bit of a closer look at it. Yeah, that's not too bad. But you see this particular style of Jack Kirby. And it's so, I don't know what you'd call it, honestly. It looks cartoony to some extent because he did do cartoons. But at the same time, it's definitely not cartoony. These monsters are like cartoon monsters, especially this red monster in the corner here. Look at this, with the pop eyes and all that kind of stuff. And this is what many of his characters look like. It was cartoon-ish, but enough with the lack of the curvatures, the lack of the fluid movement, with the very angular, very, very much, let's see here, very much light and shadow, which is something he also plays with very much. He plays with light and shadow very much. So I've just been appreciating this Jack Kirby art and pulling it up wherever I could get it. I should go look through my old Devil Dinosaur, which I just bought. Well, it was about 5 years ago. I bought the entire run, but it's not the best run of Jack Kirby stuff. But at the same time, I very much enjoyed just looking at the art. It's the story that falls down for Devil Dinosaur. All right, so I've only been talking for 9 minutes, but let's get to some of the comments and see who else is here before I move on to any more of this Jack Kirby art. Let's see. Where were we? Ryan, Michael, Leonidas is here. Okay, let's see. Vaz says it's Psycho Man is fear, doubt, and hate. Yes, he has a little board. He presses each emotion that he wants to change the emotions of the people around him. George says, I actually liked Kirby's Eternals. Too bad the movie sucked. Yeah, big time. Let's see. Corey is here. Michael says, there was a computer game called Freedom Force that was very much an homage to Kirby. Really? I don't know if I remember that or not. Anyways, there is a Freedom Force that I remember, but I'm not sure it was the one that you're referring to. George says, it may be cartoonish, but at least there is a background art there. Today, all artists draw is just a character and rarely do backgrounds. Well, at the same time, you look at somebody's art like Paul Smith. Paul Smith rarely did backgrounds, and I think Paul Smith, quite honestly, for me, is one of the top 5 artists of all time. He rarely ever did backgrounds, and his stuff is very simplistic when it comes to, again, his is very much in the vein of everything's a soft curved angle, and I love his art. But at the same time, what I was thinking about was let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to being an imitation of Jack Kirby art. Okay, we'll go back to OMAC for a second here, and before we go back to Jack Kirby. Let's see. First cover appearance, and there's not too much of his art for the first cover appearance, but there's also a page here as well. So there's the first cover for Womack. Let's see. And there's Billy Blank, who is the what do you call it? Alter ego of Womack. But what do they used to call the hands of Jack Kirby? Old sausage fingers, right? That was his name, because look at the proportions. Again, you can see that, and he knew it, that his proportions were not exactly right. But that's the point. I mean, you don't have to be you don't have to be, let's put it this way. You look at a lot of the art today that people are putting out there for comic books, and I think it's hyper detailed, actually, and I don't like that. It's the fact that they're trying to make it hyper realistic, and I don't like that either. This is comic books after all, and I think comic books work best when you work in a comic book style. I mean, it is to some extent a ridiculous medium and style, and it should be rooted in, well, the origins of the comedic comedy strips that it came out of, plus the cartoons that most of the early workers and artists actually came out of, the cartooning world, because Kirby did, what did he do? He did cells for Popeye the Sailor Man, if I remember correctly, but he found it extremely boring, just doing the same thing over and over again. But I mean, yeah, to me, this is top tier art. And again, I think it's very simplistic, quite honestly, because Jack Kirby uses shadow and light much more than a lot of other people. Only person I know who would do it as well would be, again, Frank Miller. But at the same time, everything is cartoony. Anyways, before we move on, let's go back to the comments. Oh, yes, I just jumped right into the stream. So if anybody here is new, I just talk about comics for a little while, and if you want to ask questions, please put them in the comments. So we will get to all the questions before we leave within the hour and a half-ish that I usually talk. And if you have any questions at all about any of my campaigns, one of which is extremely late, which is Crom the Destroyer, which we're trying to desperately get out there, and the other ones that I have on tap or that I've done, you go ahead, ask questions about my videos on Saturday, but what we have to talk about here, anything at all, just put it in the comments and tag me in it, or make sure you put a question mark at the very least after it, so I know you're asking a question. I will get to your comments and questions. Just speaking of which, very quickly, yeah, we're working on Crom. We're still working on Crom. Indiegogo was asking me, when are you going to launch Fade to Blue, which is the name of the book that we saw the trailer for at the first of the live stream, which we've almost have 3 entire floppy books of it ready to go. But I said to him, I got to get Crom out first. I'm working on that. I don't want to put out another book, if possible, unless it's completely done, without trying to get Crom done first, because that's my priority. And in Indiegogo, the people in Indiegogo said yes, agreed. So they're watching my back in that category, and I'm trying to get it out to people. And as I said last week, we're also probably going to be offering, well, it's more than a probably, some free stuff for everybody who is a backer for Crom the Destroyer, which is now closed, but just for anybody who's listening, some print stories, which will be online, and maybe some extra art in the mail, just little pieces of art, maybe postcards or something of the kind. Anyways, let's get back to what we were talking about. See if we have any more comments before I move on. Yeah, Vaz says, cosmic felt tip style. Yes. What was I can't remember who it was. There was one of the comic artists, one of the big comic artists. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. I have to go through my Jack Kirby stuff again. But he basically said, when mankind gets to the end of the universe, he will flip over the last page and see Jack Kirby's signature. That's how much Jack Kirby's art is basically ingrained into the artistic mind of people and the cosmic. Let's see. Michael says, Medusa grabbing Sue Storm with her red hair is very much a signature Kirby image. Yeah, very much. I don't have that one up right now, but and nor do I think I can find it right off the bat, but I know exactly the one you're talking about. Let's see. Scrolling down. Pedro says, put a cape on Omac and it still looks like Gladiator for me from the Shire. Yes, indeed. Although I don't know who the original creator was of the Shire, but what they were doing. I think it was, well, I'm not sure, but it was an imitation. The Shire was basically supposed to be the Legion of Superheroes from DC. So who he was imitating, I don't think it was Omac, but who knows? Not entirely sure. He was basically a Superman character. I think he was supposed to be the Superman character. Let's see. George also says a very astute comment. He says, plus there's a lot of colors today. The only color in comics is pink or purple. Yeah. Look at the color in the background. I mean, look at the simplistic colors in the background. You can see the pattern of color over and over again. You got purple in Mr. Big's suit. You got purple in the sash and the hoods of some of the guys that are attacking Omat. You have the purple, exact same purple, by the way, in the guy way in the background that's coming up the back end with a knife. You got orange, which is the leggings basically, and the sack. You got a couple of greens and red for the firing and for the firing of the gun and for the letters within your title box and all that kind of stuff, and a few red within the suit. Yeah, danger, which is simplistic if you ask me, but very beautiful. And you're able to pick out, your eyes able to pick out much more. Let's go down to some of the art for this. This is issue number 2. Yeah. See, where was the one that I was looking at? No, this wasn't it, but we'll just put that up for a minute. And again, very much Jack Kirby-esque. It's like googly eyes, and you got look, I mean, just the guy's teeth with the mask, with the, what is it, the skeleton mask and all that kind of stuff. It's just signature Jack Kirby. That's all I could say. All right, let's see. Scrolling down. Pedro says, Omac, I assume. I don't know. Leonidas says, RJ, comics got two spent, what? Comics got too expensive, right? And more simplistic art style could make it a tad cheaper, right? You think that would be a good way to start in comic business? I'm not entirely sure what you're saying there, Leonidas, but I think I agree that yes, it needs to go back to the simplistic art style. And it goes, that's one of the things I was going to say. The simplistic art style. Thank you, Leonidas, for sparking that in my head. The simplistic art style of Jack Kirby is not only a product of where he came from and him trying to learn how to draw by himself and basically doing anatomy the way that he thought anatomy should be done, not in an artistic way. But at the end of the day, he cranked out book after book after book after book, where most people that would even try to keep up to that level today would fail completely and utterly. They would not even come close to how fast this man could work. And again, it's what's that line from Sal Buscema? I think it's Sal, if it's not John. He said, throw away your eraser. He was told when he got to Marvel, throw away your eraser, just draw. And that's Jack Kirby in a nutshell. Just draw. The simplicity of it, it would definitely make for better comics and less expensive art, and an easier way to get your book out there quicker and convey the same amount of drama, I think. And that's what Kirby does, right? That's what Kirby does as the master. He goes really fast, but he is stylistic enough to draw you in and to convey the message of movement and sequential art, and at the same time keep the prices down so that you can have small company, because he was small company at the time. Comics were a small business, to keep the small company afloat. Although again, he had to move around to try to keep himself in business, try to keep himself in money. But yeah, good point. The simplicity of it is something that we need to get back to. Let's go back to, let's see, the third cover here for OMAC number 3. which isn't a very spectacular cover, but at the same time conveys what it needs to. And again, you want to see cosmic. It's just look at the wham zam tazapow here in this panel at the bottom of the first page, I think it is, second page of OMAC number 3. Let's see. We'll scroll up a little bit and see if we got any more comments. Faz says, Ron Friends run on Thor reminds me of Kirby. Better proportions, but the same feel. There you go. Mark. All right, Michael. How you doing, Michael? Michael says, I think it was a Fletcher animated studio. Could have been Fletch. It could have been. I thought it was Popeye that he worked for and that he did some of the stuff for. George says, I think the Shire are Claremont and Byrne collaboration. But it was definitely supposed to be, like, they were definitely supposed to be a Marvel version of the Legion of Superheroes. Let's see. Let's keep scrolling down. George says, White Skull, Red Skull's little brother. All right. Let's see. George also says, I think Ron Lim could keep up with Kirby. He did do 3 comics a month for Marvel at one time. Yeah. I don't think that anybody can keep up right now. I don't know. I don't think you think that Ron Lim could keep up to that now. I don't know. But at the same time, I'm looking at modern art. Okay. And we'll just say some of the better stuff that you see right now within Marvel or DC, or at the very least have seen in the last couple of years. And the problem is that, one, they're not sequential artists. They're basically illustrators, which there is a massive difference between the two. I had a whole conversation with, who was it? Graham Nolan? I can't remember. I think it might have been talking about the difference between the two and how, the conveyance of movement through the sequential art and the telling of the story is what turns something from illustration into sequential art. But yeah, the artists today are not only just illustrators rather than sequential artists, and they're just doing poses and there's no real movement or connection of movement. At the same time, those pieces of art are unfortunately becoming something which they can resell, so they do them extremely detailed in order to resell them later because it's their original piece of art. So that's the sad reality of it. And you see basically right down to like patterns in their in the soles of their boots, or the tracks of their boots. They have patterns that are supposed to be realistic, and it's like, if you're going to put that much work into a panel because you can sell it, older comic artists would put that much work into half a comic, and you just need to get it out there. I'm sorry. I know they're trying to make a living being artists, but that's the way to kill comic books, if you ask me. Let's see. Pedro says that's an awesome chair. Yeah, I don't know what it is with Jack Kirby and heroes that sit in chairs. It's one of the things he does over and over again. Let's see. No problem, Leonidas. Hopefully I answer your question. Let's see. PB, how you doing? RJ, indie comic creators get very defensive when I repeat what Kirby did and Buscema and Jim Shooter said. Work faster, get books out, and make money. Anything else is an excuse. Yeah, I agree. You're talking to someone whose book is spectacularly late, but I am working on that principle more and more these days. Once we get that other book, which Crom the Destroyer, we're going to be working on that principle of just get it out there. And I'm employing artists that can do that, and artists because that's what Fade to Blue is about. Let's put here. I'll put some just for a lark here. Let's go back to. I gotta switch screens here. Sorry, I'm going to lose my place. Wait a minute. Go back to the comments. Take this off. Hide that, and we'll go to. Let's see some Fade to Blue art. I think I might have some Fade to Blue art in the background somewhere. No, I don't. Let's see. Thomas Valiant, Crom the Destroyer art. And we have more Crom the Destroyer art. And now, besides, if I wanted to play the trailer again, I don't have any art, I think, in the background for. Let's see. Let's scrolling down through my own feed. Sorry to be ignoring you guys right at the moment. Okay, here we got some. Here we have some. Let's see. I gotta end this screen. I apologize once again for my Amish levels of technical skill. Okay, stop that screen, and let's put up this beautiful picture from Fade to Blue. Okay, there you go. Shadow and Light. This is what my new books are going to look like. It's Fade to Blue basically is a black and white book with a little bit of blue thrown in. And again, it's very much Kirby-esque in its creation. It's very much Kirby-esque in its execution. And again, it's supposed to be for shadow and light, all these kinds of things we're playing. That's why I got this artist. And quite literally, I saw his art and I said to myself, this would work. His art will work so much. Well, he does do, like he did his own book in black and white. And I said, his art would work so much. Well, we'll say it will pull in the same direction if you were to give him a film noir type and style of story to illustrate. And so I said, "Do you want to work with me? We'll do this." And he said, "Absolutely." And this is what we're trying to do. I mean, this is the Jack Kirby. Even the look on a lot of the faces that he does is Jack Kirby-esque. We got old style. You got your gorillas in there as well. So I mean, this is what we're doing for our stuff. Even though this artist can, as we'll see here, do spectacularly beautiful stuff. Put this back up. I mean, if he wants to do details, which he does every once in a while for a setting piece. Enrique is great. He does these beautiful set pieces, which this is basically, well, the story at this point is set in New York, so that's St. Patrick's. But anyways, let's see. One more from Fade to Blue, we'll put up in the background. I mean, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that comment saying, yes, just get them out there. And this is what Enrique does. He gets me these pages and it's like, yep, move on to the next one. Good, move on to the next one. And it's very much the old way, old style, old comic book art and comic book storytelling. And the art is going to tell the story just as much as it should, as the dialogue balloons and the caption boxes and everything else. Okay, let's go back to the Kirby art there for a minute then. Let's see. Go back to OMAC. Share screen, and we'll put on another. Let's see. We'll put on another cover. Oops. Now, why did I do that? Unfortunately, again, with my technical skills, they're not working for me very well. OMAC. Ooh, that's fun. I can do this. Let's see. No, this isn't the one. I think it's number 6. But anyways, again, if you want to see, the cartoonishness of his stuff, like, I mean, can you see remnants of Popeye the Sailor Man there? I think you can. But again, very much, it's just an outline, and it's like, how does this shadow even work on this woman's leg? I don't know. That is a Kirby thing right there. Like, how exactly does that shadow work? It shouldn't work that way. Neither should this shadow here in this woman's underneath her arm in just this one spot, and that's it. That's not a shadow that actually works. Just like the proportions to some of these characters, that's not something that actually should work. But it's done in the style where you're going, yeah, I can see that. That works for me. I mean, and Jack Kirby can do beautiful women, and that's part of the style that he's going with here for this story. But again, there's Jack Kirby monsters, which make no sense. There's Jack Kirby technology that makes no sense. Again, why does this creature need 4, 6? It looks like he's got 6 legs, and 2 of them are useless, basically. It makes no sense. But again, that's part of the comic book fun. It makes no sense, and yet you want to continue to be in this world and to understand what is going on and to enjoy it. All right, let's see. We'll just leave that up for a minute. I'll go back to my comments, and we'll see. what we're talking about here. Let's see if I can get back to where I was, because I have to find out where I was. Scrolling up, scrolling down, scrolling down. Oh, here we are. PB says, John Byrne has heavily influenced comic art, so many artists under 45 tried to copy his next level detail and backgrounds. Yeah, I always say, when you're talking about John Byrne, I agree, but John Byrne knew when to call it quits. There is, I think it's probably a She-Hulk run number 2 or 3, might be 4, where there's an invasion. I don't know. It's one of those early books, but it's definitely John Byrne. And one of those early books for She-Hulk that he did where there's an alien invasion, and he basically does a 2-page spread, and he quite literally, since he was controlling the book for the most part, not totally, but for the most part, he put in a little caption saying, something like, drink in this picture right now because you're not getting this again. He's like, I'm not doing this again. I know I'm not doing this again. I'm telling you, I'm not doing this again. I gave you a detailed picture for a setup. That's all you're going to get. For the rest of the book, you're going to have to reference back to this panel in your head if you want something as detailed as this. So he knew his limitations. He knew how much he had to get the book out there, how much he had to get that art in. And it shows with the fact that when it came to basically it was during his Namor series, you could see his switch in style. There was very much a point where every artist gets to where they know they're just as good as they can get, and they're putting in more and more detail, and they have to check themselves and say, I have to stop, and I have to go back to the simplicity of, I have to get this done and get it out there, and everybody wants to read this book now, so do it. And you can see that very much in John Byrne's art. I think it's probably with Namor is the series in the 80s that he did that for. You can see that in like John Romita Jr. He did the same thing when he did his later run on X-Men. You can just see the switch over. A lot of these arts, Barry Windsor Smith, even any artist that has been in comics for a long time, they get to that point where they say, I'm putting in too much, not too much effort, but too much detail, and I need to move faster. I need to make things more simplistic. Let's see. PB also says John Byrne knew when to go high detail and less detail in the name of expediency. Exactly. Vez says, for Kirby art, the inkers are also very important. Some made it shine, Joe Sinnott and Mike Royer, while some dumbed it down, like Vince Coletta. Yeah. And one of the things is, I think that within, I know that within the Superman stories that Kirby did for DC, they erased some of his Superman faces and had I think it was the inker redo the faces so that it was more in line with what Superman should look like rather than what Jack Kirby wanted Superman to look like. And that, I think, ticked him off to no end. But yes, you're absolutely right. The inkers are very, very important with Jack Kirby art. Again, because he plays so much with shadow and light is one of the reasons, I think. Scrolling down. George, I'm going to answer. George put this up for PB, but I think it's an important distinction. He says, true, I've never read a Byrne comic where the art got bad, unlike some high tier artists. No, I don't think it ever got bad, but I do think it got more simplistic over time. By the time you got into something like Next Men, it was nowhere as detailed as even his middling X-Men run. Not even close. And that was his version of the X-Men. And you look at the new stuff that he's going to put out, because he's supposedly putting out the we'll say alternate universe X-Men that he worked on years ago that Marvel didn't own, and you can see the more simplistic style in it. Let's see. And again, George brings up a good point. He says the need to bring back inkers. Indeed. I agree. Ryan says, RJ, Jack Kirby is the greatest because his dynamic style makes you feel the movement, action, energy, impact, time, distance, emotion, etc. Okay, that is a very good way to put it, Ryan. That's basically saying that he pioneered sequential art. I love this fact too. Look at this panel here. This is one of the things when I was doing the research before I even began Crom the Destroyer. If you look at Sal Buscema, I think is probably the best at doing this when he did his Conan run. If you look at the coloring for Conan the Barbarian for Marvel, you'll see that usually you get one panel per page. Buscema used to do, I think it was, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I did have this down at one point. It was like 1, 2, 3. It's like a 6-panel page, and he'd do it over and over again, but it would be in a slightly different format. But anyways, he would usually put in one panel that had absolutely no action whatsoever, and the colorist would always, like this one down in the corner, the bottom right-hand corner of Womack here, just talking to the other fellow. They would always use red in the background to give you an extra oomph for that panel because it had no movement in it and it was just talking. See, that's one of the things that again, I'm always talking about the beauty of the art of making a comic. Let's see. Scrolling down. Oh, let's see. We'll go to another cover. What was that? Number 5, number 6. This is the one that we had before. So where's number 7? This is the one that I think this is the last external art that he did for Womack. And again, this is very Kirby-esque. This machine here, when we get to the page, which is underneath here, you'll get to see the boxy quality of it. But I like the fact that look at these fish. I mean, they got zero. Not only does he not know how to do human anatomy, it's like, how can you not get fish right? How can you not get a crab right? That's because he's Jack Kirby. He doesn't need to get a crab right. Besides, this is the future. So, just go with it. It doesn't matter that he's got 3 legs on one side and 2 on another, plus the pincers. I mean, it's a crustacean. He could have lost a leg. Who cares? I mean, who cares? He did it. He got it. It's close enough. You realize that it's a sea creature of some kind. There's water. Move on. That's Jack Kirby for you. It's like, how is this a fish? How is this supposed to be fish anatomy? He's like, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time looking up fish anatomy. I'm just going to draw something that looks like a fish and that everybody can basically see that, yeah, it's probably a fish. That's Jack Kirby for you. Let's see, where is it? I love this guy. This is the one that I was thinking of right here. Here's your cartoony Jack Kirby art to a T. Is like, I was literally thinking about this panel for half the week, because this guy with the googly eyes, like, this is a serious panel in a Jack Kirby book. And do you really need to know anatomy that well in order to do this? You really don't. You really, really don't. So like we were saying earlier in the comments, I think it was George or someone had put in the comments, just get it done. Put it down. It's good enough. Get it done and get it out. And literally, this panel was what I was thinking about when I was thinking that in my head. All right, let's see. But yes, you feel the impact. Let's go back one more second. You feel the impact in these panels. I do have some Captain America done by Jack Kirby that looks like that somewhere here, if I have the chance to put it in. But again, I love these panels because they are absurd to some degree, and you can just see that it's like, yeah, that's good enough. Move on. All right, let's see. We'll go back to our comments here and see where we are at. Scrolling down. George says, when comics were good, you just had a writer, penciler, inker, colorist, letterer, editor, and editor-in-chief. Today, you just have a writer, artist, maybe a colorist, assistant editor, and editor. Yeah, inkers get a really bad rap, and they always have. I agree. But at the same time, if you have a penciler who can do his own inking, I mean, Enrique, which you see the fade to blue stuff in the background of the Jack Kirby art there. Enrique does his own inking. So does who else do I work with that does their own inking? Renzo does his own inking. But again, we have other artists that I'm working with that don't do their own inking, and I use a dedicated inker, and I don't mind doing that at all. But you realize that when you're trying to get a book out there, and I really not only enjoy but appreciate inkers because of Conan the Barbarian. But again, when you hire a separate inker to do this, it is just an added expense if you can get someone who's also a penciler and an inker at the same time. You got 2 in 1 and you're saving yourself some money. So unfortunately, that is the case. And again, trying to get that book out there so that people can read it, and that's your end goal, and get it out as quickly as you can. I agree with that principle. So you try to do that as best as possible. But again, like I said, it's the fact, it's really Conan the Barbarian that makes me appreciate inkers so much, because I grew up with, what is it? I always call it Conan on the Cross. It's basically Conan, Savage Sword of Conan, I think number 2, where Conan gets crucified. Anyways, they reprinted it in a treasury size edition, and they colored it at the same time. And I had that since I was a kid. I loved it. And you could see the detail of all the inking in there, because Buscema's did not put detail. They specifically didn't put detail into much of what they did. John Buscema, I think it was John Buscema, who, let's see. It wasn't Sal, I don't think. Let's see. Give me a second. When he was doing his Conan art, he was doing it as much as possible. Yeah, it was John. I don't know why I blanked on that, but when he was doing his Conan art, he was doing it as simplistic as possible. And you had these inkers who were, I think, Indonesian, and they basically not only went to town on the inking for those Conan books, but they were told, this is where you want to shine, put in as much detail as you want in the background. So details in pillars, details on shields, all of this stuff within the Conan the Barbarian, John Buscema artwork is very much because of those inkers. And I think that it made those books so much more beautiful. Let's see, scrolling down. PB says, high detail in every panel tires out the eye. Definitely. Your brain doesn't know where to focus and what to ignore. Byrne has the best backgrounds and technology ever, but he picked and chose when to use it. Oh, I agree. Again, that is one of the things that you hit right the nail on the head, PB. One of the things that modern comics don't understand. I've done videos early in my channel over and over again about how the mud color palette of modern comics doesn't allow the eye to focus correctly, especially the male eye, to focus correctly in order to see the patterns and shapes and movement that sequential art need for you to translate through the panel gutter into this happens, then that happens, and I don't need anything more than that, which is basically a snapshot, and I can fill in the blanks, which is the panel gutter, the fill in the blanks with the rest of the movement. When your eye can't focus correctly, it just gets distracted, and you can't do that. And you're absolutely right. There's too much detail in some of the modern comics, and that's what kills a lot of your sequential art. George says yes, and I still miss spelling errors. My editor misses spelling errors as well. So unfortunate. We will try and correct that when we can. Ryan says, RJ, Kirby understood layering and often hid things in the layers as you look deeper into the distance of the backgrounds. Yeah, agreed. That was one of the things that Barry Windsor Smith did as well when he was trying to be an imitator of Kirby. He didn't quite get it right in the first early books of Conan the Barbarian, but you can see his attempts to get it right and how he is trying to hide some stuff. And basically you can see where he's falling down and can't get things correct, and he tries to hide it. in the exact same way. Let's see. Pedro says, RJ, I want your honest opinion. What do you think of the cartoonish-like characters in more realistic stories, kind of like Spider-Ham? I'm not entirely sure. What do I think of the cartoonish-like characters in more realistic stories? I think it can work, certainly. If anything, manga and anime have proven that, because you have basically, in a lot of stories, you have a cartoon character that's supposed to, which is sometimes an animal, sometimes an actual person, is supposed to exist in the same world as the other very hyper realistic sometimes characters. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I think, what's the name of that fantasy anime and manga? It's like Blue. What is Blue? I don't know. It was set in a different world. But yeah, it can work. I think it definitely can work. I don't think that Marvel did it very well with things like Spider-Ham, but it definitely can work. That's my honest opinion on that, Peter. All right, scrolling down. Leonidas says, hey, RJ, I heard about this guy, Wally Woods, that he said stuff about how to make fast work. He spoke about tracing and copying. Isn't tracing a big no-no? What is okay and what is out of the ethics now? It's always, honestly, that's one of the things that's really just in flux, depending on when you live and your capacity to actually use the stuff around you. Jack Kirby is known for doing that exact thing. Jack Kirby, there's a picture of, because we have the internet now, people can now say, hey, wait a second, this is a picture that Jack Kirby ripped off of a magazine, and I know because I'm showing the picture of Sue Storm, and this picture is from like the exact pose. Basically, she has an exact pose with something on her head, is in this magazine, and so yeah, I would say that it's a good starter, and you have like I watch manga artists every once in a while. It's a really fun to see them work. You go to YouTube, you look at their pages, and you watch them work. They copy themselves over and over again, and that's one of the things that the instructors of early comics said: you copy yourself. First you copy someone else, and then you move into copying yourself. And people still do it. Again, manga artists still do it. Now you move into the phase of what we have today when we have the internet, where you can look up every last bloody image, whether or not it's going to, it makes it so much easier for you to do that, but at the same time it makes it so much that you're going to get called out for it over and over again. So it's one of those things. Wally Wood, by the way, is one of the other godfathers of comic book art, and his use of light and shadow is spectacular, and his use of framing also is something that I wish that I had a better grasp of, and I wish that most comic creators had a better grasp of, but always trying to improve. I'm not even going to attempt to say your name, sir. Let's see. He says, I just wanted you to know that I watch you in Russia overcoming the state ban on this platform, which also deals with censorship. I am very interested. Keep it up. So there's a state ban in Russia for what? For all of YouTube, or for certain things on YouTube? That's interesting. That's really interesting, because I used to have a lot of watchers in Russia, because YouTube does break it down by region for you if you want to go look through your analytics and things like that. I used to have a lot of people watching me in Russia. How come they can't watch me anymore? That's very interesting. Scrolling down. Let's see. Vaz says, Wallywood inked Kirby for Sky Masters, if I remember correctly. Okay. I don't know that one off the top of my head. George says, RJ, that fish obviously came from a river from Chernobyl. Yeah, it's the future. It's a futuristic fish, George, is all you got to say. Tony says, RJ, what are your thoughts on Robert Pattinson Batman? I really don't have much thoughts on it at all. I don't even know if I got through that entire movie. It's like I don't much care. Quite honestly, I know that's not a detailed answer to you, but some things I just don't care about, and that's one of the things I really don't. Let's see. Oh yeah, there was another page somewhere. I think it's Kubert that does the cover for number 8, but who does the internals? Let's take a look. Yeah, it's Kubert. Yeah, but it's Kirby that does the internals for it as well. And again, there you go. Doesn't that panel just stare into your soul? But there is a panel somewhere that I can't quite figure out where it is on one of these covers, which is just absurd, and I'm not sure where it is. I think it might be one. Might be one. My apologies, everyone, for the we'll say a little bit of respite from me. I tried to back up. I'm trying to work with multiple panels here. I mean, multiple panels, multiple windows open at the same time to try this new thing with StreamYard. And I actually backed myself out of the entire live stream. That's how technical I am. Let's see. I want to go back to cover 1. Let's see. There we go. Oh, I'm not sharing the screen anymore. Let me rectify that as well. OMAC number 1, share. There we go. Not sure if it's in this. No, there's somewhere they give a 2-page spread. Where's the 2-page spread? I don't see it. We'll go to some other Jack Kirby art. We'll go to Kirby art. I love this website, by the way. It's got it just breaks things down. Let's see. What do we want? Let's go to Captain America. Here we go. Captain America. 100. We'll go to some beautiful Captain America Jack Kirby art with Black Panther. All right, we'll leave it there. Okay. Excuse me for just 1 second. I got to clear my throat. All right, back to our questions. George says, oh, yeah. Let's see. We don't have that up anymore, George. So let's see. Scrolling down. Tony also says, RJ, what is your favorite Frank Frazetta Conan painting? I really don't know. Honestly, I think his Cole. I think he did a Cole cover where they're trying to pull him off the horse. I think that's Frazetta. If it is, that's probably. I love that cover, but again, not entirely sure. There are so many beautiful artists for the covers of Conan that they blend together in my head. I couldn't tell you which ones he did and which ones he didn't do. I mean, the Conan on the Cross, that was spectacular cover as well. Whether Frazetta did it, I don't remember. Let's see. Scrolling down. Tony also says, RJ, what are your thoughts on the old quality comics character Blackhawk? I love the relaunch done by Howard Chaykin in the 80s. I don't know. I never really got into Blackhawk. I take it you're talking to the DC Blackhawks. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about a different character? I'm not entirely sure. Because the DC characters of Black Hawks, the ones that flew, or they were World War II aces, that's what I'm thinking of. But maybe you're thinking of a different. I don't remember a Howard Chaykin relaunch. So you'd have to give me a little more detail. Scrolling down. Zach Tan is here. How you doing, Zach Tan? Try by blessing, as John says, from Zach Tan. Let's see if Tony can explain. Have you ever read Wally Wood's Superman, Man of Steel, Woman of Tissue? I don't think I have read that, but I couldn't say. Again, you'd have to give me. I am so visual. You'd have to narrow it down a little more than that, Tony. And he also asks, what are your thoughts on the 12-year-old Scottish girl that was arrested for defending herself against a migrant with a knife and a hatchet? What do I think? I think that the Scottish people should do the exact same thing that the migrants have been doing for the last, 10 years or so. Get themselves, because literally the reason why a lot of these people are not charged is because even if they do get taken into custody and are brought to the police station, they get a gang of migrant people to go to the police station and threaten a riot so that they'll let them go. And that's the way they will let them go. And I honestly think that that's what the Scottish people should do. If this girl is taken in seriously, taken to a police station, and they're going to do, show up with a mob. Quite honestly, not to say that the mob should do anything extremely violent or even slightly violent, but you show up with the mob. Show up with the mob and let them know that they're not going to settle for that kind of ridiculous two-tiered policing. We'll just put it that way. Those are my thoughts. And good on her, quite honestly. They're trying to blame her right now for her provoking the people who were trying to attack her. I just like, as a Scotsman in my heritage, I'm just saying, good on this girl. I would show up if I lived in Scotland and someone said, let's go protest, we'll put that in quotation marks, to get her out of that police station. I'd be there. Let's see. Baz says, RJ, did you read Jack Kirby's rendition of The Prisoner? I did. It's not published, I don't believe, but it is online. See, I have that somewhere. Like, I have it literally in the back end of my computer somewhere. I downloaded it long and ever ago. I love The Prisoner. Prisoner was something that I shared as a passion with, funny enough, it was I think it's my grade 12 English teacher. Anyways, we used to trade things because we had, it was VHS tapes back then of The Prisoner, and he actually went to Scotland and visited where The Prisoner was filmed, and he got me a whole bunch of souvenirs and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I love The Prisoner, and the Jack Kirby did it justice with his rendition of it. Let's see, and that's saying something, because that's a very difficult piece of media to try to replicate. Tony says, RJ, what kind of comic writer do you think Bill Finger was? I really couldn't say, Tony, honestly. Let's see. Scrolling down. Ryan says, RJ, comic book artists should be stylized, exciting, and entertaining, as it takes you out of reality into the comic book world. Completely agree, Ryan. Completely agree. And that's part of the reason why these modern comics made for modern audiences, and it's supposed to be the world outside your window, not in a Stan Lee kind of way either, world outside your window, but in the modern world outside your window, which just means representation for every marginalized group. They want you to never get into a world of fantasy. So they try to recreate things. If it's not bad art, which is complete, I mean, there are plenty examples of bad art, especially in Marvel and DC. Somewhat things like Fire and Ice. Those are awful. Some of the Robin books of the last 10 years, just hideous. But when you get these hyper realistic people who can do illustrations, not sequential art, that's what they're doing. They're trying to pull you back into the real world, not to, as you say, Ryan, here, to steep you in that comic book world, which is what should be done. I agree. Tony says, RJ, I was talking about the aviator hero Black Hawk and his Black Hawks. Yeah. I don't like, I mean, I remember it being rebooted in the 80s, but again, and I do own those books. I really do. I mean, those are some of the first books I got. Oh, quite honestly, if I remember correctly, one year when I was a little kid, I got basically it was the first long box that I ever got, but it was like a 3/4 box, and it came with comics, it was stylized, and it had comic panels on the outside, which was part of the box itself, not someone putting them on there. But Black Hawk came with that. The Black Hawk #1, which I own, came with that. Anyways, yeah, I don't remember the series. Like, I mean, I know I read it. I know I own it, but I don't remember much about it. And I only have very few of the older Black Hawk series at all. So I wouldn't say it didn't make a big impact in me if I can't even remember what the story is even about. Saktan. Saktan says, now she's a true Scotsman. No fallacy. All right. Tony also says, RJ, do you think that Suicide empathy will be the downfall of Western civilization. I don't think it'll be the downfall of Western civilization. Might be the cathartic rebirth of Western civilization. Because yeah, you can't empathize past the point of, well, just the obliteration of all other virtue. Your virtues have to be balanced. That's what temperance is all about. You can't have one virtue lorded over all the others. Virtues don't work that way. They're hierarchical in nature. So you want to be empathetic? Sure. You can have empathy. That's a good thing, and it's a virtuous thing. But to use it to shine out the other virtues, you're turning it into vice at that point. And yes, will destroy civilizations. You can see it already destroying civilizations in Europe and smaller parts of America and, Canada. I'm sure probably Mexico too. Let's see. Zektin says, victim blaming, believing all women unless she is on the losing end and of oppression Olympics. Yeah, that's toxic empathy right there for you. Let's see. Tony also says, what are your thoughts on the final of The Prisoner? It was psychedelic enough so that it worked, even though I couldn't understand the entire thing the first couple of times I've seen it. Even now, it's not something that's meant to be fully understood, Tony, for The Prisoner, for the final of it. It's supposed to be an open-ended story, as far as I know. It's supposed to be an open-ended story because the whole point of the story is that you don't get boxed in by this or that. And the story itself nails that in the very end by saying, we're not going to box you in, even as a watcher of this show, by telling you this is the exact ending and here's how it goes. No, you come up with that yourself. Let's see. PB says, The Prisoner is a really good TV show ahead of its time. Agreed. Although, I think it could only be made in the 60s. Let's see. Scrolling down. A man called Plush says, I might have an idea of what kind of Bill Finger was. Mind you, I'm still doing some digging. Let's say a shadow novel has been looking forward to, has mailed in. Okay. Not sure what you're looking for or what you're saying exactly there, except for the fact to answer the question about Bill Finger earlier on in the comments. Let's see. PB says, a superhero is supposed to be unrealistic. That's the point. They aren't supposed to be relatable. I wouldn't go so far as to say unrealistic so that they're not relatable, but I would say stylistic enough so that it works within the world that you're engaging your suspension of disbelief in order to enter into. It's like the Marshall McLuhan idea of you steep yourself in it. That's what I was thinking about before. Or you get into the piece of media as if it was a hot bath. That's the way that stylized art, like Jack Kirby's art, actually works. And that means that the unrealism of what you have within your art, because it is an imitation of reality, works for you with that engagement. Let's see. Vaz also says, the first comic book of The Prisoner I read was the one that takes place years after the series ends, with number 6 returning to the island. I like that one. Yeah, that came out, I think it was from DC. It was a graphic novel series that came out. Yes, I remember that as well. I can't remember what year it came out on. Let's see. I can't think of off the top of my head. Probably like 91 that it came out, maybe. But yeah, I know that series. I have that series. It was a good series. It starts off with, if I remember correctly, a woman finding this island or this piece of land where the prisoner used to be, and the entire village is in ruins. And she finally gets to the place where number 1 is supposed to be. And who do you find out is sitting in the chair of number 1, but number 6. That was a good series. I agree. Let's see. And that's how it starts off. Zaktan says, empathy can be useful for understanding someone, but it is limited in finding truth, which is necessary for actual justice and love. To some extent. Yeah, that's because empathy deals with emotion. I agree. because you're trying to understand the emotions of other people. That's what empathy is basically. You feel the emotions of the other people. It's not to say that the feeling of those emotions can't be built upon other virtuous ways to connect to the person so that you can genuinely feel those feelings. Or if you want to bring it into the realm of the spiritual, Zachtan, you would probably agree with me that, the idea, the charisma of reading of hearts is a thing, right? Because basically, in the larger Christian, what is it? In the larger Christian way of thinking, when you talk about charismas, basically it's, since Jesus was an actual man, being actual God and actual man, anything that he can do, other people can do with enough blessings from God. And one of the things that he did was to read other people's hearts. So you want to go religious in that direction. People can do that. It's basically a miraculous ability given to you at certain times in life if it is necessary for God's plan to come to fruition. Let's see. Faz says, The Prisoner, Shattered Visage, a 4-issue comic book miniseries published by DC 1988 to 1989. Yep, I was off by 3-4 years. But it's not just a 4-issue comic book miniseries. It's a 4-issue graphic novel miniseries, if I remember correctly. It was hardbound. Not hardbound. It was Baxter paper. No, it wasn't Baxter paper. What was it? It was glossy paper internal and stock card cover for the external cover, and it was square bound, not hardbound, square bound, which is different. Let's see. Scrolling down. Zachtan says, oh, look, we've gone through our hour. Let's see if I can get to the end of the comments. Superheroes have great abilities for greater challenges, so it can end up being proportional and relatable. Good point. Let's see. We'll see if we can get through some of the rest of these comments before we have to take off. PB says, McGowan said that The Prisoner is a direct sequel to Secret Agent, which, yeah, you can see that definitely. He just didn't have the rights to the name of John Drake, but that's why he made the opening look like Secret Agent. Yeah, that's even back in the day when I was watching it on television and we were just watching Secret Agent as probably reruns in the middle of the night on, I don't know, Nickelodeon or something like that. You could tell that Secret Agent was the precursor to The Prisoner, and it was supposed to be that way. Scrolling down. Tony also says, what are your thoughts on Jack Kirby's Golden Age work for Marvel and DC, like the original run of Captain America and his Sandman run? Sandman stuff, I never really got into that very much, but again, the first book, John always asked the question, can you remember your first comic book? And I cannot remember the first comic book that I actually purchased, but I can remember the first comic book that I actually remember picking up and reading, and it was from my brother's collection, and it was a Captain America, and it was a Jack Kirby Captain America. Let's see. We'll just leave it. I won't go too far since we're already over an hour. Try to find that cover, but yeah, I love the Jack Kirby Captain America. Let's see. A man called Plush says superheroes are sometimes something to aspire to, but the relatability and hyperrealism Hollywood goes for has become overkill or misses the point. The Batman 2022 is a good example. Yeah, see, that's one of the things I always talk about Will Eisner. And one of the things that Will Eisner has said over and over again when he was writing his books on how to create sequential art, he said, you can take sequential art or a comic and turn it into a different medium, like a more static medium of movies and television. More static if you go with movies, because, well, it's a different kind of medium. Again, going back to the Marshall McLuhan way of thinking about media, but I won't get into that. But he said that you can do that and it'll work out fine, but you can't do it the opposite way. You can't take a movie and try to translate it backwards into comic books. It just doesn't work. If it does work, it's going to be a lesser format than the original. Whereas you can take a comic book and turn it into a movie and make it a greater format. You can't do it the other way around. It doesn't work. And I agree that the hyper realism that they're trying to put backwards from the movies into the comic books does not work. I completely agree with that statement. Let's see. We go through the last of these comments. Tony says, RJ, do you think that number 6 ever truly got off the island? Yeah, in the end, I do believe that he got off the island. But at the same time, yeah, there was a hint at the very end of the last episode of The Prisoner that he did become the new the new number 2, because number 1 was supposedly a computer, if I remember correctly, but still. Yeah, I think he did get off the island. Let's see. Faz, Squarebound. Yes, indeed. Talking about those prisoners books. Zaktan says, that is interesting. I hadn't thought about reading hearts as a gift to the spirit, but it does make some sense, certainly within God's sovereignty. There you go, Zaktan. It's basically because Jesus was able to look into the people's hearts and see what they felt. So yeah, it's a gift to the Holy Spirit. PP says, it could be argued that number 6 came to understand the need for the island. Can't have spies retire suddenly without knowing their true intentions. I don't think that. Well, I think the whole point, especially with I'm not a number, within the very opening of the series, is that you don't become part of the establishment. You still remain an individual, even though you want to be doing something greater with an establishment, but you don't become part of the establishment. It was an anti-establishment narrative run straight through The Prisoner from the 60s, if you ask me, which to some extent, there's so many bad things coming out of the 60s, but at the same time, I don't think that he could be convinced that he would be as much a part of the establishment that he would continue the island's operation, to my mind anyways. But again, Prisoner is supposed to be an open-ended, as far as I'm concerned, again, an open-ended ending, so you can pick your own ending, basically. Let's see. PB says, I disagree with the methods, but I can see MI6 doing something like that. I can't. I could just see them putting a bullet in the back of people's heads if they're, not going to be useful to them anymore. Let's see. Ryan says, RJ, can an atheist be a truly virtuous hero if they have no spiritual basis for their morality? Considering the fact that, okay, if you want to, it depends on where you're coming from with your question, Ryan. If you're assuming that there is an actual spiritual reality, let's say Christianity is true, and can you be virtuous and be an atheist at the same time? You still believe that if Christianity is true, that God's law is written into everyone's hearts, and he may be attributing things to an entity which is basically God, which he calls something else. So there's a possibility. I think there's a possibility, but I wouldn't go much beyond that without doing a deep dive into answering that question for myself. It's the best I can give you right now. Let's see. Scrolling down. PB says, and I agree, some things work better on the page than on the screen. Some work better on the screen than on the page. Direct one-to-one adaptations can't work. You need some room for interpretation. Agreed and completely. Look at your early 1980s comic book interpretations of just Captain America. That was awful because they tried to recreate almost exactly things like, well, the shield was actually, it was almost like a rubber or not a rubber, a plastic, and it was see-through in parts, but they tried to recreate as best as they could the Captain America uniform, and it just didn't work. You have to, you're absolutely right. There has to be some room for interpretation. Is number 6 a hero? That's a good question, Faz. That is a really good question. Is number 6 a hero? To the extent that he is probably the most virtuous person on the entire island, I would say yes. Is he a hero in the sense that he is working, if you're talking about, my traditional go-to for the definition of hero, going back to a paragon of virtue, would he be a paragon of virtue, or someone becoming a hero, I don't know. That's another question. Being from the 80s, or so the 80s, being from the 60s, I don't think that was a question that they really even considered. But again, he's the most heroic of the people there, if you want to put it on a sliding scale, which I don't particularly like to do, but that's about best I could do. Let's see. Everyone's quoting the prisoner. You got PB. No, Tony saying, I'm a man, not a number. Exactly. Zekdan says, the problem with spy agencies is the temptation to become a state within a state, a deep state. Yeah, I think that, I don't know, but the 60s was a different time. So was the 70s and 80s, with the fact that you had the Cold War going on and everything was about spies, because that's the only way you could have covert operations. You couldn't have overt operations, or you'd have World War III. So things have changed massively since then. Scrolling down, I think this might be the last comment. Nope, not quite. Tony says, RJ, have you ever heard the Iron Maiden song that they wrote as a tribute to the prisoner? I don't think so. Quite honestly, Tony, I don't think so. PB says, RJ, at what point do we change perspective and understand the need for harsh tactics? Was one of my prisoner takeaways. Okay, good. That's a deep thought on the entire thing, and good perspective. I like that. That the exploration of that question does certainly pop up over and over again. Let's see. Where did John come from? John there? Hello, John. Are you there?
Hey, can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Just hold on 1 second. I can see you, but I can't hear you. I have to put on my earphones. 1 second. 1 second. We're gonna mute John.
I'm in my car.
I have muted John. I have put John on mute because you probably getting some reverb because I don't have my earphones in, and I need to have earphones in order to have a guest, or else it's going to see.
Can you hear me now?
The entire sound system for this video. 1 second. Pardon me. Technical difficulties. Are you there, John? I can see John a little bit, and there he's gone. Okay, so let's just get to the last of the questions. Yes, that's John from John's Long Box. Yes, it is. Let's see. Yes. Okay, I did get to the end of the questions. Unfortunately, I can't situate John in whatever format he's in to get him to appear on the screen correctly, both sound and visual. So we're just going to leave it there. I want to thank everybody for just coming here and talking some random things about comics and some really good discussion with other mediums like television and The Prisoner. Love to hear everybody's thoughts on it. And quite honestly, I've been getting a lot of really good ideas from my videos, from the comments that you guys have been putting on the videos, but also from doing these live streams and just talking to people. You guys just bring up some very fascinating things that I've never even thought about. So thank you all for showing up, and anybody who comes in later, because we got about 20 people in the stream, but we usually get about 400 to 500 people watching the actual stream during the week. So hello to everybody who watches later on, and thank you for showing up. Thank you for watching, and thank you for participating in my rambling videos of Make Comics Fun Again. I just like to do something a little more relaxed on Wednesdays, and I appreciate everybody for showing up and helping me with that. All right, I'll leave it there, and I'm just going to end the stream. Will not play any trailers right now, just because, well, I played the trailer at the first. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for showing up, and I will see you either on Saturday or next week back here, possibly on John's channel. Not sure where we're going to be. All right, I'll see you later.